Coker versus Georgia is the case that I'll be presenting. This case is about Ehrlich Anthony Coker, who was actually in prison for rape, first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and kidnapping. He had multiple convictions before actually escaping prison and breaking into the Carver household. He tied up Mr. Carver while raping Mrs. Carver, and then after stole their home vehicle and kidnapped Mrs. Carver. He threatened to kill her if any police officials stopped him or tried to arrest him. This was taken to the Supreme Court of Georgia. The Supreme Court of Georgia actually sentenced Mr. Ehrlich Anthony Coker to the death penalty. Well, this was taken to the Supreme Court, and in a 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court decided to deny the death penalty under the Eighth Amendment because it was cruel and unusual punishment since he did not actually kill Mrs. Carver. This brings me to my first summary by Malcolm E. Wheeler. His journal was Toward a Theory of Limited Punishment, the Eighth Amendment after Furman versus Georgia. So Furman versus Georgia, which is where a stepfather actually raped his 8-year-old stepdaughter and displaced many of her organs, and she had to go through surgery. This was the first time the death penalty was even considered in the realm of rape, in the punishment realm of rape. Well, Malcolm E. Wheeler actually talks about his opinion on the Eighth Amendment and specifically regarding death penalty and rape. He says that the decision on Furman versus Georgia actually confused confused more people than it did clarify things. So basically, throughout his journal, his opinions as to why there should be three simple rules, should be applied to the decision making when thinking about rape crimes and punishment for them. These rules basically are that there should be boundaries and there should be a standard punishment, but it should vary by degree of rape because not all rape occurs the same. So the punishment should be more or less based on the degree of the crime. My second summary is with David J. Karp, and his journal was Coker versus Georgia, Disproportionate Punishment After the Penalty for Rape. And he talks about, basically he starts out by talking about the background about the case, kind of like what I did in the beginning. And then he explains the evolution of the application of the Eighth Amendment. So the Eighth Amendment was initially created it was more like closed, narrow mindset, and it was mainly towards the federal government. The federal government, it was used towards them to ban torture and deem that cruel and unusual punishment. The second phase consisted of extension of the meaning of the Eighth Amendment to punishment in relation to crimes committed by citizens. So then the second phase of it was actually applied to civilians and citizens instead of just the government. The third one was in Furman versus Georgia, as explained before in my summary with Malcolm. And this was the first time that rape and the death penalty were actually put in the same category. The dissent actually, there was many dissents on this, but the dissent for this particular case that stood out to me was that this man had so many convictions before actually raping and kidnapping and threatening to kill Mrs. Carver, where the death penalty shouldn't be questioned. it just doesn't, he basically is talking about that it just doesn't add up as to why, you know, the death penalty was denied for him. Because he was, you know, as we talked about, convicted of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and kidnapping, and rape. And he actually escaped and then did the same thing right after escaping. So it was kind of a no-brainer about the death penalty. I think he didn't understand why the Supreme Court would be against it. But this was Coker versus Georgia. Thank you.